guys, I'm Danielle, or Danny for short. I'm originally from Guam, but my family and I have been living in Norfolk, Virginia since early 2021. And of course, since then, we've just been, having fun exploring the area and checking out new places as much as we can. And I've enjoyed documenting our experiences out here so far. While I've mainly featured us exploring different restaurants, bars, and events out here in Virginia, one major event I thought would be great to share about was my birth experience at the Sentara Leigh Hospital here in Norfolk. With this being our first baby and us being far from immediate family, it was such a relief to know that we were in great hands with their staff, and I definitely wanted to share about my positive birth experience. Of course, if you find this video informative or entertaining in any way, then please give it a like, and let's get into it. So I want to start this video by providing a brief backstory as to how and why we did our baby's delivery the way that we did, which was a planned C-section. My pregnancy, to be honest, was really smooth for the most part. Majority of the time, it was a great experience. Of course, there were the normal aches and pains that I kind of expected that showed up here or there. But then at my 36-week appointment, when they conducted a routine ultrasound, we found out that our baby was breech, frank breech to be exact. And that is basically, if you're not really familiar with what that position is, it's where the baby is actually head up. They're upright. And frank breech is kind of picture somebody being in like a folded in half pike position with their legs, up towards their face. So yeah, she was definitely doing yoga poses in there. Now, my OB, along with some of the nurse practitioners, gave us, what were the options that we could go about for her delivery. And if we were to go with what they would be a planned C-section, this is something that would happen in week 39. The other option that was also suggested was doing an ECV, which is an external cephalic version. And that's basically a procedure where the baby is, manually flipped. You're maneuvering them from the outside. But what I was informed was that procedure would have to take, if we decided to do that, that would have to take place in week 37. I did ask if it was possible for her to flip on her own in time because we were still, 4 weeks out from my due date. And they said just with the how far along I was, how much actual space she had, which was not that much, it was just very unlikely that she would flip in time. So wanting to consider, the pros and cons of either option, I looked into, the ECV, and really in this particular situation, the cons kind of outweighed the pros. It was just kind of one red flag after another that didn't seem to line up with what we needed to have our baby delivered safely. And above all, let me, already put that out there. I wasn't married to a specific birth plan, so I really wasn't going to feel robbed if I couldn't get a regular vaginal birth. If I had to, have her out using a C-section, all that mattered to me was that she was delivered safely, and I would deal with the repercussions regardless. Some of the reasons why I didn't go with the ECV was just because, for one thing, they did say that if during the procedure, if anything, unfortunate were to happen, such as the placenta detaching or her heart rate drops or just whatever could, happen, that would spark me into labor, then they would have to deliver her via emergency C-section. And every week, let alone every day that your baby spends in the womb is so critical. And so I just didn't want to risk her having to be born too early in week 37. On top of that, I didn't have any of my support people with me yet. My husband was out on a detachment at the time, and my sister, who was going to be my other support person, she wasn't coming in till closer to my due date. So if any of that were to happen, I basically would have been by myself, and I didn't want to run that risk. And the third thing was, this is kind of something I was curious about it, but I wanted to know if this kind of procedure, the ECV procedure, was covered by my insurance. I am on TRICARE Select, And when I did a little bit more digging, there's coverage, but it's not fully covered because it's an elective procedure. And my OB also said that there is always a risk that even if the ECV is successful and they were to flip the baby into a head down position, there's always the chance of her flipping right back. So that was also on my mind was, well, if I'm going to have to come out of pocket, to have her flipped and then it just goes right back and then we have a C-section anyway, then it's kind of like I felt like I would be putting my baby under unnecessary stress. So trusting that instinct and considering the situation as a whole, we just decided that doing a planned C-section was the best route for us. We set the date for early morning of October 7th, which was a Friday, and we got to the hospital at around 5:30 in the morning. And the nice thing about doing this at Sentara Leigh was that it's only 12 to 13 minutes away from our house. So if my husband needed to go back and forth for whatever reason to pick up, anything, food, equipment, anything for our comfort, then it wouldn't be a stressful commute for him. As part of the pre-surgery prep, I was instructed to not eat anything past midnight, but I had to drink a liter of Gatorade, blue or yellow, anything but red, before arriving at the hospital. This was weird for me because I probably hadn't drank Gatorade since I was in middle school, but the whole point of this was to lessen the possibility of nausea and dehydration, which can sometimes occur post-surgery. Something else that was really helpful about this pre-surgery prep was that a few days prior to our actual, delivery date, a nurse from Sentara Leigh had called me and she kind of just went over, a couple of standard things, for us to know, such as for my shower of the day of the surgery, to not use anything that has perfumes, but maybe like only antibacterial soap, I believe, skipping any lotions or oils on the area of surgery, making sure that we bring masks to comply with their COVID regulations, and also some helpful tips like, just leave she suggested that we leave our hospital bags in the car until after the surgery was done, and when we would get set up in a recovery room. That way we're not, or my husband at least, would not be dragging these bags and equipment around with us. So we checked in and we were, set in a little private waiting room. And about half an hour before the actual procedure was going to begin, they had the anesthesiologist come in and just kind of explain how they would be administering the anesthesia. So I had been reading, blogs and articles and watching, other videos on YouTube about C-sections, and I was fully expecting that they were going to be doing an epidural. But he explained that instead of that, they would be doing a spinal block, which is just one shot that goes in, and then you basically just get numbed from the chest down. And I'm not gonna lie, I was honestly relieved that I was just gonna be getting one shot, because I'm okay with needles, but reading about how an epidural is administered, I was like, man, I don't know how I feel about a tube being fed into my spine. I would much rather just get one shot and have it done with. Finally, it was delivery time, and I tell you, my heart was just racing the entire time out of nervousness, anticipation, and excitement, but it was just one of those where it's like, you feel like it's Christmas morning where you're gonna open up the biggest gift under the tree. And so we were just so excited the entire time. But they basically wheeled me out of the waiting room over to the operating room, and they had my husband wait outside when they were going to administer the anesthesia. And so in this case, they had me sit on the edge of the operating table and the operating bed, and they told me to hunch, to really curve my back and hunch. In fact, one of the nurses stood in front of me, and I was so thrown off by this, but she was like, go ahead and hunch over and you can hug me if you like. And I thought, why? Is it gonna hurt that bad? But it was just so that they could really get my back to protrude out. So they, make sure that they're giving me the shot in the perfect position on my back. But that just made me laugh because I was like, why do I need a hug? But yeah, that shot for the spinal block was not bad at all. It literally feels like someone just kind of pinches your skin, it doesn't even feel like, I've heard other people describe it as like a bee sting, but I was like, no, actually this was just a tiny little prick on your skin. And then before you know it, within minutes, I just felt the numbness kicking in. It was so strange. So they, they're the ones lifting your legs back onto the table and laying you in the correct position. And at that point, then they brought my husband into the room and sat him on a chair beside me, like right by my head. They also had a curtain or like a drape lifted, so it basically blocks your view of the actual procedure taking place. It's definitely a strange feeling because you're wide awake and you're alert about everything. Like, you don't feel drowsy or anything, but you do feel like this pressure. That's the only way I can describe it. It's like a pulling sensation. A kind of like weird way of describing it is you feel like a treasure chest and somebody's rummaging through you. It's like you feel your body moving, but you're like so alert, just kind of looking around, and you're like, wow, what is going on down there? I mean, I know what's going on down there, but yikes, it just feels so strange. We had asked the nurses if we could film, not the actual procedure because we didn't care to actually capture that, but I at least wanted my husband to just have a camera rolling to capture audio so that we could get her first cry. And so they did say that, they would just prefer wait until the baby is delivered, and he can just have his camera ready in his pocket, because really you're not supposed to have anything on you. So under the scrubs that they gave him, then he just had like his phone in his pocket, like ready in his pocket. And then when it was getting closer, he went ahead and had his phone out on his lap. And the nurse who was by my head was guiding both of us as to what was happening, saying, oh, okay, we're almost there, we're almost there. It was just they made me feel very comfortable the entire time.
There we go. Oh my gosh, we're getting so close. Are you ready for this?
What is it? There we go. And the other one. And go ahead.
There we go. All right, Dad, you want to sing? Give her just a second. She's going to bustle up.
So I'm not gonna lie, even when they all were rejoicing at the same time, they all were like, oh wow, like, there we go, here she is. Wow, she has a lot of hair. Oh, she's smiling. I did not rejoice. I delayed because I was like, I'm not going to celebrate until I hear her actually cry. And the whole thing about a C-section too is because it's not like a normal labor process where the baby is getting the amniotic fluid slowly pushed out of their lungs and out of their ears, out of their nose. When they're being taken out through a C-section, they have to extract that, manually. So I was just waiting, but I tell you, the minute I heard her cry, I'm getting like chills just thinking, recounting the experience. But my tears just started coming down. I was almost bawling, not like ugly crying, but it was just so overwhelming. It's like, oh my gosh, this is happening. This has happened now.
Oh. Oh my God.
Once they lifted her up past the curtain so that I could see her, it was just, oh gosh, my breath was taken away. I couldn't believe it. First of all, I think my first thought was, I can't believe you're real. I was like, you're real. Because this entire time I've just been connected with her from, feeling her from the inside, but then to actually see her physically, it was just amazing. And then my second thought was like, that was inside me? Like, she's so tiny, but she's also so big, in my opinion, like she's so big. How does she fit in there? It was just so many things are going through your mind, but it's definitely a magical moment. So right after the doctor said, congratulations, they went ahead and had the nurses take her over to a little warming area. And this is where they just wanted to make sure that all her vitals were good. And during this time, that's, the curtain is still up because that's when they're kind of like sewing you back together, stitching you up. And the funny thing was because, as I mentioned earlier, because she was frank breech, her legs had been positioned up by her face. I hear her crying and everything, and it probably wasn't even that long of a wait, but they just want to make sure everything's good. But it had to be the longest 5 minutes of my life because I was like, I just want to hold her. But at the same time, it's like, I know you need to do your job. Go ahead. So I was looking over at the table, and all I could see is that anytime they would place her on her back, her feet and legs were just like up in the air, like overflexed, because they've just been positioned like that for so long. And I just thought it was the cutest thing. All I see are dinky feet. I'm hearing crying, but finally they brought her over to do skin to skin, and it was just such a heartwarming moment, you know, just to finally be able to hold your baby. And so she was 7 pounds 6 ounces and 19 inches long. And all I was, like I said, all I was concerned about was that she was healthy. She, you know, was delivered safely. She had all 10 fingers and all 10 toes. That's all I cared about. So after they were done, you know, stitching me up, they went ahead and took her away so they could like get her wrapped up. So they wheeled me back to my recovery room, and they placed Mila in a little hospital bassinet. You know, it has like that little clear barrier so you can see her the whole time. They let my husband know he could go ahead and grab our stuff from the car, which was, you know, my hospital bag, his hospital bag as well. And that's kind of where we were the whole rest of our stay in the hospital. During my immediate recovery process in the room, they had, you know, bundled up my legs, put like leg warmers on me so it could just kind of start getting the blood flowing again. They also, you know, let me know that I might experience a little bit of nausea, and that's just something that could, you know, happen after a procedure like that, like, you know, a very extensive procedure. And which I did. It wasn't that bad, but, you know, they had advised, like, don't start guzzling down a bunch of water. You will feel a little like parched, but you might want to either, you know, like suck on ice chips, or if you do drink water, just like tiny sips at a time, because you don't want to shock your digestive system by like introducing something too quickly and then you just end up throwing it up. So, you know, that had kind of happened to me. Because I love drinking water, so I might have drank my water a little too fast and got sick. On the subject of food, they did have a, you know, the hospital cafeteria. I guess they also have like a food delivery service. So we had somebody come in for breakfast, lunch, and dinner and ask us, you know, what we would like. And their food was actually really great. I can't even remember what I had for each meal, but they were just very light options, which I really, really liked. So we stayed in the hospital for 2 days. And, you know, during this time, they also were doing some things with Mila, like conducting her hearing test to make sure, you know, that the fluid in her ears didn't really affect, you know, or you know, affect anything with her hearing. They also had given us, you know, kind of like a tutorial of how to give her a sponge bath, to be careful about like where her umbilical cord was. So that was, you know, something that it was just very, very helpful. Each of the nurses, whenever it was their turn to come in and, you know, be watching us, they were just very informative on a lot of things, and not even just like the standard, you know, like guideline sheet of what you should know being a new parent. Like they would give their own personal feedback about what they felt like worked for them in the past. And so that I felt was really nice. There was like a real personal touch to their care. One thing for sure that I thought would be amazing to share was, so they get, your baby gets this ankle tag, and every time a nurse comes in to do, you know, most of the time it was when they were going to administer like my pain medication, but they would scan my wristband, my hospital wristband, and then scan the baby's like ankle tag to make sure they like lined up. But one funny thing that did actually happen was in the middle of the night. So what we picked up on was that our baby was very, very active. Like she would just kick, and her arms go around. Like she wouldn't cry that bad, but she was just very active. So she'd wiggle out of her swaddles and whatnot. And in the middle of the night, I guess the ankle band had kind of shifted onto her foot. So you could tell that was bothering her. So my husband was trying to adjust it and put it back onto her ankle. And in the process of adjusting like the actual band, I guess it set off an alarm so that it was, you know, there was a notification getting sent out that the ankle tag was getting tampered with. So immediately, like 5 seconds, and 2 nurses came in, and we didn't even know what had happened at the time, but they came in and they're like, okay, no, the baby's in the room. Yeah, no, everything's fine. Mom and dad are here. We were like, what's going on? Like, we just thought it was a routine check, but no, it was because the band like set off an alarm. So that was another, you know, level of security that was like, great, my baby's not going anywhere. And so they assured us like, oh, okay, no, here, we'll help you fix the tag, fix the ankle band, but yeah, if it gets moved again, it's just gonna set off an alarm. So just, you know, expect us to be running in if it happens again. I definitely can say that the staff there, the nurses, there was a lot of turnover. I probably had 4 nurses a day, and each one of them was just so fantastic. I can't say that enough. They were just so, it's like, yeah, they were professional, but they were just very personable too. As cliche as it sounds, it's like you didn't feel like you were just a patient. You felt like you were a person, and especially you're so vulnerable after, giving birth to your baby. Me with that extra layer of, going through major abdominal surgery, there is that possibility of feeling vulnerable. But one highlight that stood out to me was it was late at night, and I want to say the nurse's name was Lita, but she just had a very, very soothing, calming voice. And she just came in and sat down and was like, we just started chatting, and she was just very, very comforting, like telling us that, don't let anybody tell you that, not to spoil your newborn. There's no such thing as spoiling a newborn, like all they want is your love. Why wouldn't you give that to them? And, she just said, you guys are going to be amazing parents. It was just like a very encouraging encounter. I really, really felt, that like everybody who was there just loves their job. But they really went above and beyond to just make us feel so welcome and so comfortable during our stay there. At the end of each nurse's shift, I was prepared, and I would highly encourage anybody else who's planning, who probably has a delivery coming up soon, is prepare some sort of like gift bag or gift box, because you don't realize until you're actually in it how much those nurses do for you during your recovery. And especially in this case, because I felt like they really did go above and beyond, I was just so happy that I had these gift boxes prepared. And so after each nurse, was ready to leave, I just gave them, and it was just, a little gift box full of little treats, like a Starbucks gift card. I think I put like essential oil and nail polish, or, just like little beauty things in there, which is like a really simple way of saying, thank you for taking care of us and for taking care of my baby. So then the morning of the 3rd day is when we got discharged, and they, provided us this little like new parent packet, walked us through, just little things that, we might expect, when we first get our baby home, letting us know what's normal, not to panic about certain things. But of course, they always open up the opportunity that if we did feel at any point that we didn't know what we were doing, or we just were so concerned about something, that we could always call them, and there would be somebody that's, on standby to be able to answer our questions. And we packed up everything in the room, and they wheeled us down and out to our car, and we, got home, just got settled in, and just took a deep breath, was like, all right, let's do this. Because that's where the real work begins, is when you don't have any of the professional nurses around, and you're just, you're gonna start being a mom and dad, like fresh out of the hospital.
Oh my goodness. So cute.
As far as my long-term recovery went, there were definitely some things that I made sure I took it slow on, as I was advised to. Knowing not to lift anything heavier than your baby, so like nothing heavier than 10 pounds. Be prepared that walking up and down the stairs might be a little tough. Just certain things to kind of be wary about. So it was definitely a great idea to have, support people around me. I had both my husband and my sister, helping me around the house. Definitely don't be too proud to ask for help. You're already doing a lot by feeding your baby. Oh my gosh, I can't even tell you that, like, actually drains you physically. There'd be so many times I'd be feeding her and I would fall asleep because they're just like pulling all your nutrients out of you. And of course your body's trying to recover too, so it's natural you'd be very, very tired. But then they would do everything else. They would go and change her, they would burp her, somebody else would be cooking food, someone else would go clean the house. So it was definitely wonderful to have that extra support, that extra help present. Our baby girl, Mila Jade, is now about 3 months and is just such a character. That's all I can say. There are definitely good days and harder days, but it just, every time you look down at that precious face, it just makes all the minutes of lost sleep just so worth it. And you just know that you would do anything for that baby. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, then please give it a like. And of course, if you want to see any of my other videos of either exploring around Norfolk, Virginia, or my, my pregnancy journey, then definitely consider subscribing to the channel and you can check those videos out there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!